Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Friday Night Chill with Will. This is episode 8. So I hope you're all doing well tonight. So tonight we are talking about friendship, because friendship is magic. I'm just kidding. We're not talking about My Little Pony tonight, but we will be talking about friendship, and I just kind of wanted to talk about my experience with friendship as an adult, because friendship is one of those things that I think gradually evolves as you get older, and there are certain things about it that change as you get older, and the ways we make friends and the way we hold on to those friends. And I'm not claiming to be any expert on how any of it works, but I'm just sharing my experience, and hopefully there's some takeaway from there. So, one of the most unique things I think about adult friendships for me is just kind of, I guess, the work involved with it, because friendships as an adult, at least for me, have seemed to be very taxing. I don't know if taxing is the right word, but there's just definitely a lot more effort required once you're an adult. Because when you make friends as a kid, I feel like a lot of those connections come from the environments your parents put you in, or your guardians, or whoever is looking after you growing up. A lot of that stuff is just kind of like pre-built, and so you kind of just befriend people in your immediate communities. That was the case for me, anyway. When it came to like friends at school, I didn't really have like friends, if that makes sense. Like, I had friends at school, but I didn't really talk to anyone outside of school. So when I got older, and me and my dad started going to church, and that was about like junior high. I started hanging out with some of the other church kids, because we had like youth group or whatever. We had junior high and high school group, and so that was kind of like my network of like friends, because like we would see each other like a couple times a week, and then like as the years kind of went on, we kind of developed more of a, I guess, familial connection, because it's like it's a church, it's a a tight knit community group. So that's kind of how that worked. So I wouldn't say I really had any meaningful friendships, I would say, until I was actually a teenager or in junior high and high school. And I don't know if like that kind of played a part in just kind of how I navigate friendship as an adult, because as an adult, you have to do everything yourself. Like there's no, I don't know, there's no help if you want to meet new people. It's kind of up to you to make those decisions and reach out to people. And I think because it took so long for me to like develop connections like that, like to make friends like that. Sorry, I bumped the camera. That was weird. Anyways, because I think it took me a while before I like made friends. I think I kind of developed attachment issues um, because as an adult, at least for most of my adult life, like the scariest thing for me has been when friendships end, because plenty have ended in my life. You know, I mentioned a few weeks back when I was talking about part of my coming out story, how um, when I came out to the youth pastor and his wife, um, I had considered those two friends. We had hung out, um, and recreationally, like outside of the church. They weren't. I mean, they were a little bit older than me. It was like probably like a 10-year difference. They were like in their late 20s, early 30s when I was like 20. Um, but when they, you know, when they found out about me like being gay, it was really a thing where they were just kind of done with me. And like a lot of my friendships ended in that moment when I came out. And um, I don't know, it was really hard to navigate that because I felt so disposable. Because that's the part that kind of like sucks um, about friendships is, for some people, like, friendship is funny because you can interpret it. Two people can interpret the same relationship in completely different ways, and it, it's kind of crazy how that can happen, and how different interpretations can be, and the confusion that can cause. Because here I was, friends with all of these people for, a good portion of my teenage years, going into early adulthood, transitioning into adulthood with some of these people. And, they found out one thing about me and just decided to be done. Now, at a certain point, it wasn't all them, like, disowning me. Um, it was kind of the other way around. I think one thing I've noticed, more so with adult friendships, as opposed to like, friendships when I was younger, is I'm less worried about being, I guess, misunderstood, or not so worried about being the bad guy in the scenario, or at least perceived as the bad guy. Um, because there have been a lot of friendships that I've had that, when I lay out everything and I like look back on it, and with hindsight, um, those friendships look really shitty, dude. Um, a lot of it was, I think it was just kind of a convenience type of thing for some people. Because I can remember having friends in like grade school, or at least people I called my friends in grade school. But I can also remember those same people bullying me. But for whatever reason, like, I programmed myself to call them my friends. So, oh, Grayson is in the chat. Hi, Grayson. How's it going? But yeah, so like, as a kid, I think as a kid when I was having those relationships with, I guess, my bullies, and I would call them my friends because we would still, like, even though they would like bully me sometimes, we would still like play together, which is weird. Um, uh, Even though they would do that, um, I still considered them friends. And then now I look back on it and I'm like, man, I can remember like you doing something really fucked up to me, and then we still played together and had fun. Like it's weird, you know. And also, funnily enough, like I don't know like what this means or anything, but a lot of the people I hung out with as a kid, we all ended up being queer in some form or another. So I think that's interesting too. Uh, I I unintentionally hung out with all the queer kids. Um, but yeah, Chance is here too. Hello, Chance. Um, so yeah, man. So I think relationships like that as a when I was a kid, kind of affected the way I perceived my friendships in early adulthood because I I think my biggest issue is I didn't want to be left out. I didn't want to be left out of anything. I also didn't like attention like on me all the time, which is, but I mean, I guess that's kind of like give and take. You know, I just didn't want to be left out of stuff. I wanted to be included. I mean, we all, as a kid, you know, when you're a kid, you want to be included in all this stuff. So if like a bunch of your classmates and stuff are doing stuff, I mean, you're gonna probably want to do it too. And so I think because of that, I kind of started like people pleasing, and that was really hard to grow out of because as I got older, it really fucked with some other stuff because I would let people get away with doing so much shit to me and just kind of being generally shitty to me. And some of this has been very recently, within the past few years, I would say. Um, you know, I would let them get away with kind of like disrespecting me. And one of the things, you know, that I've kind of learned as I've gotten older is like, you know, you don't have to put up with stuff like that. You don't have to deal with you don't have to deal with people treating you like shit, you know? You don't have to deal with that, you know? Um and it's hard to deprogram myself from that because you know, you still have that fear. You don't want to like be alone and you don't want to like be by yourself all the time. But sometimes it's what's needed, you know. Um, you know, within the past couple years, a lot, and I mean like a lot, of my friendships have ended. Um, you know, people I thought that were really close to me really weren't, and you know they just kind of like disappeared, and it sucks because like especially with social media you can still kind of keep in touch with people, and depending on how the person chooses to go about it, sometimes you know it's just like a thing where like they block you, so like you can't see their stuff at all, which personally I think is preferable. So that way you can just kind of move on and forget about it. But then you also have like some others where it's just like they'll unfollow you on stuff like little by little. You know, they'll just kind of slowly but surely kind of stop interacting with you as frequently. Um, yeah, so I think social media has definitely played a part in how you perceive friendships. Um, because it's weird because it feels like it's so much easier to talk to people now, but if there's like issues and stuff, like no one really wants to talk about it or work things out. And you know, sometimes you gotta wonder, like now I try to think about, would it have even been worth, you know, having those conversations? Was that even a relationship worth, you know, attempting to save. And because I can recall doing this or trying to do this, and it just wasn't worth it at the end. Like I was trying to save this thing, and there was just no point because I was not met with the same level of effort from the other person. So it was just like abundantly clear that this wasn't a thing that was gonna continue. And it's shitty. It is pretty shitty. I've just been, I've just kind of had that on my mind this week. Because that whole moment a few years back when like just about every relationship I had, every personal relationship I had ended pretty much all at the same time. I mentioned this a few weeks back, probably in, I think, the third episode, but like it really fucked with my sense of self-worth, and made me think that, I don't really mean anything to other people who are not my family. But I know that's not true. It's just something I have to remind myself of more now. But it has definitely made me really nervous when it comes to making new connections. Because, I feel like it's easier when you're a kid because, like, you have school or you have, like, sports. Like for me, it was church. You have all these, like, networking moments where you can just kind of, like, meet other people your age and, see if you get along or whatever. But as an adult, you can try and do that stuff with work, but it's very different, because, it's a job. It's not like a thing where you have to be there. I don't know. It's just like the circumstances surrounding the environment are different. And so, there are a lot of people who just go to work, they do their job, and they leave. And they don't really associate with anybody else outside of work, and that's just kind of their life. And that's perfectly valid. You are, that's perfectly fine. That's a thing you can do. So as an adult, it's really up to you to find ways to network. And for me, that has been, I don't know, it's been like very difficult for me. Because I've like tried in different ways. Ways I've tried is like using Grindr as kind of like a networking app, which has kind of worked. You meet people, but things are so weird with friendship in gay world, at least from my experience. Because in gay world, the line between platonic friendship and romantic can get blurred really easily, I feel like, unless you communicate that very effectively very early on, which is kind of not always the case, because sometimes when you're starting these interactions, you're not entering the conversation in the right mindset. You might have other intentions in mind. The other person might have other intentions in mind. And so a lot of miscommunication happens, and a lot of stuff that muddies up the friendship. Because, like, I've had plenty of, friendships where we were fine and, things were cool and we were friends and blah, blah, blah. But then some stuff happened and things kind of got physical, and that's kind of for it kind of ruined everything. And it's tough, you know, um, because I think especially as gay people, we would like to find friends that are more like us than not. Um, because I don't really care for being around too many straight men. I get very uncomfortable around straight men unless I know you. Um, it's just like a safety kind of thing. And, I would just feel safer around another queer person. But, you know, everyone's feeling different things at different times of the day. And sometimes you're just like, well, you're here, I'm here. What if we. And then, like, stuff happens and it gets super fucked up and complicated. Um, and it's unfortunate. But yeah, man. Navigating, making new friends is like really hard. That's kind of been one of my major struggles. Um, I would say of at least the past 2 years. Um, I can't really think of new friends I've made, quote unquote. Like, it also doesn't help, like, the terminology, because social media has totally changed the way we use that kind of terminology. We'll call people our friends even after, like we'll call, like, people we follow on Twitter friends. And, like, sometimes that's true, sometimes that's the case, sometimes I've actually formed genuine connections with people. That's how I've met a lot of my really good friends, even ones that I'm not friends with anymore. Um, that is a genuine way of making friends nowadays. But I feel like, uh, the way we use that kind of terminology is kind of looser, and by definition, than it used to be. Um, because, like, I feel like we kind of just use it as a kind of an interchangeable word for a phrase, where instead of you saying, oh, this person I follow on Twitter, you would say, like, in casual conversation with another person, you would just say, like, oh, my friend. You know what I mean? Because it's just so much easier to say that than to, explain kind of how you know this other person. Um, so, yeah. So, like, yeah, it's weird because it's like, I feel like there are so many people that, consider me their friend. And, like I was talking about a little bit earlier, two different people can interpret the same relationship in completely different ways. So, like, while that person's interpreting, a genuine actual friendship, I could be interpreting it completely differently and not realizing that person actually sees value in the connection that we have, with each other. And I don't really know how that can be conveyed more clearly. I don't know. It's one of those things that, like, once you meet that person in, like, real life, I feel like it becomes a little bit more solidified. Um, yeah, see, like, Grayson says it perfectly. See, says, "Oh no, my new thing is blocking your comment. Can I move it? No, I can't. Okay, well, it says my buddy Will is how you are referred to. Yeah, see." um, but yeah, so it's just it's different, and once you meet some of these people in real life, that's kind of when you see. That's kind of when you know it's genuine. You know what I mean? And that's not always the case. I feel like there are moments that can. There are plenty of moments that can, determine that, this person is actually invested in me for the right reasons. But, yeah, it's a weird situation, because like I feel like right now in my life, I feel like there are so many more people where I'm just their friend Will, and that's just kind of like a name that I have, rather than actually, being friends with these people. And I probably could be better about maintaining those connections. But part of the struggle for me is the last few relationships I've had, like as far as friendships, actually just my relationships in general with people, have all been like super fucking exhausting. Because like I feel like there's so many times where I feel like I am the glue holding this entire thing together. And I think it's important to like try and be realistic about the situation, because I don't think people are always like intentionally ignoring you or avoiding you or just like, not talking to you, because we're all, we all got our own lives going on. We all got different stuff going on. And, life just gets busy and sometimes we forget about stuff. Some people also have kids. That's another factor. Some of my friends have kids. And, there have been moments where I'm just like, I get frustrated, where I'm thinking like, man, this person, like, I haven't heard from them in months. But then you have to consider the fact that, well, that person is taking care of a whole ass other human that they made. And so that can probably interfere with a lot of like free time and, stuff that they have going on. And so it's important to try and recognize those things, and those moments when they're being, just normal, like, it's just like normal life stuff going on and, time just gets away, as opposed to like other people where it's just like, you can kind of just tell they're just not talking to you just because they don't want to. And that's been the thing that has been more apparent in my life lately. And it kind of sucks. I always think about, because I still think about like, oh, what's a way we can make this whole thing work? And, like I said earlier, I kind of like have really started deprogramming that kind of thinking for myself, because I don't think every friendship is worth fighting for like that. I think there are some that are, but I think there are some where the circumstances surrounding the friendship just kind of make it not worth it. And that could be a temporary kind of thing. It could be a thing where it's just like, this other person is in this situation right now and you have really tried hard to be a good friend, but it just seems like things are not, panning out still. It's very okay to just kind of take that space back and just be like, all right, well, I guess we won't do this anymore. But I think it's also important to remain open to revisiting that, because things change, relationships change, and all kinds of relationships change. Like friendships become very different. They might start out one way, but they can end up in a completely different way. In some cases for better, in some cases for worse. So I think it's just kind of important. You just really have to, as you get older, you just gotta keep in mind what's worth it. You know, um, with so much trying that I've done and trying to maintain all my relationships, romantic, platonic, familial, you know, um, you just got to really think about like the long term. Like, is this actually worth it in the long run? I think that's really important. So, yeah, man, that's that's just kind of been on my mind this week. Um, you know, I don't know how. I still don't know how I'm going about, you know, these new relationships because, like, um, I completely cut out, uh, like, dating apps and just like, ne- hookup apps or networking apps, whatever the fuck you want to call them. And that's been over like a year now, and I'm kind of very happy about that decision because like I feel like those things, depending on where your head is at, don't help anything. They just kind of make you feel shittier about yourself. And then if you don't have any personal boundaries set up immediately with like all these new people that are like hitting you up all the time, things can get really messy. And I kind of just would like to avoid all of that, and I would rather just kind of, I don't know, man. I really don't know. Um, I've been trying to like brainstorm how to meet new people, but I don't know. It's it's just a lot harder, I think it's also harder. Like, I can't really go to a. I mean, you can go to a bar. I don't particularly drink. I've drank a very moderate amount of times in my life. I didn't even start drinking until I was like 25. Um, so it's like, like I've been to like bars and stuff and like talked to people, but usually when I went out to bars and stuff, I already had like a friend group and stuff. So it's just, I don't know, man. You really have to get involved and like do other stuff. You gotta like join a book club or, like a fucking dodgeball or volleyball league or some kind of shit. Some kind of some kind of community thing where you can meet with people, and that can just be very intimidating. Um, you know, because like there's just a lot of me that just doesn't feel like I'm ready yet to do that kind of stuff. But I also recognize that I can't just do nothing, because then so much time goes by and it's just like you're not making any headway and making things better. You're just kind of existing and just kind of getting more in your head, because you think people aren't going to like you. I think is kind of the thing. And not everyone will. And that's also something very important. I think when you're a kid, you really try to be friends with everyone and, be gung-ho with everyone and be friendly. But, as you get older, I think a really big important thing is just kind of realizing that you aren't going to be friends with everyone. And just because someone doesn't want to be friends with you, doesn't always mean something malicious. It's not like they wish harm on you or anything like that, because I have plenty of people that I do not want to be friends with that think I, wish the worst for them all the time. And I just would like to not interact with that person because I've seen how they are. I've met some of these people in real life. I've seen how they are. I've seen how they behave. And I've just kind of made the decision that, you know what? I don't really want someone like that in my space. I don't want to talk to someone like that. And it doesn't mean I wish anything bad on the person or anything like that. But it's just like, I don't think we're going to gel as well as you want us to. And, you kind of just need to be okay with that. And I am more okay with that now than I think I've ever been. Because it doesn't make sense to try and force a friendship with people who aren't really fucking with you in the first place. It's not worth your time, there are people I hung out with for years, and then now it's just like, yeah, they weren't worth all that effort. I should have recognized that sooner, and we could have just been done with that whole thing a lot sooner. But, hindsight is 20/20. But yeah, man. Anyway, that's just kind of been on my mind this week because of just personal goings on. And I don't know. It's just been something that's been on my mind, and I wanted to share it, of course, because I would like people to know that, shit's hard. Being an adult is hard. But it's, it's worth it. I do think I will make new friends. Luckily I don't get to too dark of a place where I just think that I'm not ever going to be able to make new friends and just kind of like set myself up for failure. Failure. That was weird. My mouth stopped working. I think it's... I do believe that, the relationships in my life can still change. There's plenty of people I haven't met yet, and some of those people are like probably gonna be my best friends someday, and we just don't even know yet. It's just kind of difficult not... I think the problem is with the relationships in general is like we compare all of our relationships, right? Because we are able to see so many different people's relationships in our lives. And we just, we want the same things that other people have, because like, I gotta tell you, man, like I'll look on like social media and stuff on like Twitter and Instagram and places like that. And, I see people having like a birthday or some big event, something where they're inviting their friends. And a lot of these friend groups are like gigantic. Some of these people have like 20, 30 people like there, which is so many people, first of all. And when I see stuff like that, I kind of look at it in a kind of a pessimistic way where I'm just like, there's no fucking way you can convince me that you have really deep, meaningful connections with all of those people. And, maybe it's just because for me, I really like keeping my circle small, I would rather have a handful of really deep, meaningful friendships than just like more surface level, casual ones with a bunch of other people. Because I think that's ultimately what ends up happening. A lot of these people just kind of have more surface level relationships, and that works for them. They're getting what they want out of those relationships in that way, and ultimately that's what matters. But I think it's hard not to compare yourself to people like that, where you're just like, you're just kind of like seeing like all these people care about like one person, and then you're like over here and it's just like, man, I barely talked to like 2 people for like the past 2 weeks, and one of those people was my mom. You know what I mean? So I feel like it gets I don't know, it's hard not to compare yourself, but with like most things on social media, you gotta make sure not to take it too seriously, because 90% of it really isn't, So, any hoozles, guys, I think I want to leave it there. I've been talking a lot, and I just kind of wanted to, kind of talk this over with you guys tonight. And, thank you for tuning in live. I've been very happy that more and more people are still finding the show, even after, it'll be a little over 2 months now, if I hadn't missed that week a couple weeks ago, but but it's fine. We've been doing this for 8 episodes now, and I've been really enjoying it. I felt like we've struck a very good balance of me, discussing kind of the nerdier stuff a lot of you may have known me for, on the internet throughout the years. But I also really appreciate getting to open up to you guys and just kind of have these more meaningful conversations about things, and just kind of how these things are affecting my real life, and just kind of getting to know me beyond kind of my surface level. Because while I feel like I've been fairly transparent on the internet, during my time on here, I feel like there are certain parts of the internet where I haven't been as transparent, and I try to have not necessarily a persona, but I definitely kind of, I kind of play up a little act, which everyone kind of does for social media. It's not always completely genuine, but for the most part, everything I post comes from a genuine place. And so this thing has really opened up an opportunity for me to like talk about more serious stuff, and I really appreciate that you guys are still listening to it and vibing with it. I would like to change it up very soon. Maybe we can start like having guests on every so often. Still thinking about how exactly I want to do that, because I don't want this space to become I don't know, very crowded, and there's a certain vibe and a certain energy I really want to keep for this show, and something that I think is really important, and I have the power to maintain that this time around, and so I would like to do that. So anyway, now that I've rambled you're off about nothing, thank you for watching, you guys. If you are listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere you find your podcast, consider subscribing or following on any of those platforms, or sharing the episodes if you, vibed with what I was talking about tonight and wanted to share it with someone. I would appreciate that. Also, leave reviews on any of those platforms. Those are very helpful, and it helps get the show out, and I appreciate when you guys do stuff like that. So, any hoozles, we'll be done for tonight. Thank you for tuning in for the show, and I'll see you next week for another